So today's interview for SME Business TV with Frankie, Goodman, myself, Nigel, Whittaker, is Barnaby Wynter from the Brand Bucket Company. Good morning, Barnaby.
Good day to you. Good to you too.
Frankie, I know you've got a few questions you'd like to start us off.
Yeah, I do. Something that I've been playing around with a little bit at the moment is, and it would be great to hear your thoughts, that I think we've seen, not just in business, but in general life, people's opinions of what's important has changed. And it almost seems like a lot of things have been reset to a level playing field. We've seen today with some images coming out from Wales and so on, like, you know, there's goats that have claimed back certain high streets of certain areas and so on. And it almost just seems that like there's been a bit of a reset in general life. And I think that's going to apply a lot to business as well. So I feel like there potentially could be a bit of a level playing field for people after the events are over and things return to normal. And basically what were the small and medium-sized businesses have the opportunity to reposition themselves as some of the larger agencies. And I think some of the larger agencies could certainly lose some of their business and may not have the strength and power that they once did. And certainly from my own perspective, I'm having a lot more time to analyse my own business and look at sort of the financial elements and where I think we were going right and where we were going wrong. And it's certainly a case where we're going to reevaluate the agencies who we work with. And I think certainly for bigger companies who may have treated their clients as numbers to some degree and not nurtured their existing client base as well. I think a lot of those businesses will feel that now and certainly maybe look for a different option when things resume. So I guess the question is really, do you feel like there has been a little bit of a reset or could be a bit of a reset? And how do businesses position themselves to take advantage of that when things go back to normal?
That's a great question. And I think inevitably when people are faced with a reset button, they tend to do that. What can be slightly unsettling is, of course, once it all passes, everybody reverts back to type again. So I think one has to be very careful about the scenario we're in at the moment, which is unprecedented at every level, because it has an economic implication. It has also a local implication as well, very much at an individual level. So I think the context we have to be very careful of. The rules that still apply, whether we're in a crisis situation or whether we're under normal situation, is one's own understanding, one's value proposition. So, and what I mean by that is, what value do we place on the work that we do, the benefits that we provide people, and how we communicate that. And what tends to happen when people are really looking through a very, very small lens, whether it's financial or whether it's from a need point of view, is they're really searching hard for the true value in relationships that they have with their organizations. And if an organization has got flabby, if it's got lazy, if it's started to really take those relationships for granted, what tends to happen is it gets caught out very quickly. And that actually can be true of both the small business and the big business. Big businesses tend to have systems and processes and often lock you in. So to a certain extent, as long as they're still working, there's no reason that something would happen. But in this unprecedented time, clearly they've stopped working because people can't go into work, people can't go and run things, people haven't transferred their systems and processes into the online arena. So they're really getting caught out at the moment. For small businesses, the relationship often tends to be with individuals, and certainly the leaders or the founders of the small businesses. And bear in mind, 95.6% of all businesses have 3 or less people working in them in the UK. So they're really exposed from a relationship point of view. So maintaining those relationships when you can't meet, when you can't chat over coffee, becomes a real challenge. And what happens is, when you are in a marketplace where there's lots and lots of choices, there is now, because you can kind of go online with everybody and anybody, you have to be really, really clear on what your value proposition is for people to maintain that relationship, or they will simply drift away and go and buy from someone else who is better at communicating their value. So I think the first thing we all need to do is really go back to the basics and say, what is it we're in the business of? What value do we provide the people who buy from us? And until we've done that, we can't really begin to build up from that. And I think what can be very scary for a lot of businesses who have sort of survived through relationships and people they know and sort of telling stories in a certain way, is they suddenly find they haven't got any value, and they will go out of business very quickly, whoever they are. And from an agency point of view, you've got to be very, very clear on what it is you're going to do for people, how you're going to make a difference, what your true value is. And if you can't communicate that, I'm afraid in these particular circumstances, you're going to get found out very quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the toughest questions that you tend to come across. You ask businesses, what value do they provide? And you very rarely get an answer. So what's kind of the sort of process that they could go through to, and I think really and truly deep down, sometimes people do actually know, but they struggle to communicate that, especially when you ask them to say it out loud. You know, from your perspective, how do people drill that down, and how do people get that out of themselves to start to communicate that online and virtually and for other places?
I think, okay, so what you have, the first thing you've really got to do is you've really got to identify what it is that's good about what you actually do. And the way to do that is literally to sit down, get some paper, rip it up into little squares, or use a post-it note or whatever pad, and write, literally spend 15, 20 minutes writing down all the good things that you do for people. Don't worry about what they are or where they are, but just all the good things you do for people. And that exercise alone is very cathartic, because immediately what you're doing is you're thinking about what are the good things that I do. Now, what you can also do is write down all the things you really love about your own business, because often that is what people buy from you, the fact that you're very enthusiastic about the things that you love doing. So again, create a pile of those, and eventually what you'll find then is, if you then lay them all out on the table, that they kind of pattern out into particular things. So that's the first exercise you should really do, is really sit down, spend some time and write down really what's good about what you do. Because the chances are that people who are buying from you are buying those good things from you without you even noticing, and they've already worked that out for themselves. What you'll also find is, in amongst all of the things you've written, you'll probably find some words which are more behavioural, more style. So you might be very accurate, you might be very efficient, you might be, these are the sorts of things you might be writing down. And so what you should also do is pick out all of the words that are kind of how you behave as an organisation, or as a person, or as a business. And what we found over the last 10, 15 years is the people who buy you tend to buy you from a differentiated point of view through the style, the way you do business. So it's the way you do business that it makes your difference in the marketplace. Because in the end, if you're an agency, or you're a lawyer, or you're an accountant, or you run a sandwich bar, or you run a cafe, there are lots of other cafes, sandwich bars, lawyers, accountants, agencies. And what makes us probably go initially towards one over another is their style of doing business, the way they do business. So the thing you've really got to define is, what is it that you're what's good about what you do, and therefore what you're going to give people, and ultimately what's your particular style. And if you can identify those two things, then what you can start to do is behave like your style in marketing terms. So then you can go into the social media arena, you can go online, and you can behave like your style. And what we do is we buy from people we like. But most importantly, the research that we did in 2005, we discovered an extra dimension to that, which is, not only do we buy from people we like, but we buy from people like us. So in other words, as buyers, we're looking for people who are similar to us. in their style. So what you need to do in social media terms is communicate your style. So if you're a bit more fun, a bit more alternative, you're very precise, if you're very technical, if you're very enthusiastic, if you're very serious, if you're professional, all of these are words that would determine how you present yourself in the marketplace. Now, if I'm in the marketplace looking to buy from someone and I consider myself to be very, very professional, and I see a very professional outfit, I'm probably more inclined to work with them than somebody who's young, trendy, a little bit alternative. I'm probably more inclined to go and buy from the professional organization. Equally, if I'm wanting something different, a bit edgy, a bit more alternative, I'll probably go to the other type of business that's presenting themselves that way. So you set yourself some behavioral criteria, and then you stick to it and push that out into the marketplace. And that's how you differentiate yourself. So that's the exercises. Write down everything that's good about your business, and therefore those are kind of the things that people might buy from you, and identify your style of doing business and make that the tonality and the style that you present in the marketplace.
It's really interesting because I quite often try to say to myself that it doesn't matter about friendships in business. There are no friendships in business. It doesn't matter to me whether I like someone or whether I don't. If they add value and they can deliver what I need from the perspective of my business, then that's what counts. However, although I say that, I certainly don't. And that becomes apparent with the type of people I work with. I absolutely do only work with people that, you know, are very similar mindset to what we are, and people who have the same values that we do. And I guess that sort of rings very true with how people communicate messages as well. A lot of people tend to look for inspiration from elsewhere, you know, and I'm full guilty of that myself at times. And you see someone who you think is doing really well on whether it be Twitter or LinkedIn, you try to replicate what they do, and you almost remove your own personality from what it is that you're doing. And I guess that's quite clear now in these current times that maybe people are better off just being a little bit more sincere, a bit more true to themselves, and communicating their own personality, as opposed to necessarily sort of looking for inspiration and trying to replicate it.
Yeah, and I think my industry, the marketing industry, has been guilty of 30 years ago inventing personalities that people then bought into, and they were called advertising ideas or campaigns or whatever. That's absolutely not true anymore. I think people are buying there's the rather crass word authenticity. People keep talking about being authentic and being about yourself, but actually what we are looking for are relationships where people just say, I like the cut of your jib, I like your style because it's very similar to the way I see the world, it's the way I want to be seen in the world. So therefore I am going to associate more with you and what you offer than perhaps somebody else who offers a similar thing but does it in a slightly different way. So I think it's really important now that we are very clear that our personal brand as leaders of organizations has a major impact on our organization, and the organization should reflect the personal brand of the organization, which every business has. Any group of people has a certain identity just by the very nature that they're all together. If you're a football fan, you support a certain team, and you blend with people who follow the same team, and you have a view about opposing teams. If you're part of if you drive a certain type of vehicle, then you're part of a club. If you own a certain type of dog, if you live in a certain area, actually you very quickly identify with those people in that area. It's actually how communities build, and what the essence of a brand truly is. It's just a thing that kind of binds people together.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. That's kind of a rule that I've always set as well, that I never mention football in a business communication, because it is so tribal and it's so sort of people have such strong opinions on it. As much as I do follow football, I go to the football, it's something that I always remove from any business communication. And I guess what we said there brings me quite nicely onto the next sort of point, is that how businesses behave at the moment. people do seem a lot more sensitive, and I felt that myself. So, you know, you get the typical LinkedIn message that's communicated, rather than it's targeted individually to you. It's kind of a mass message. It's pushed out there. It's a very aggressive kind of marketing communication that they're really sort of quite obviously asking for business. And where that would normally sort of not really register with myself, or if it was something that I felt like I may have a need for further down the line, I would keep that message in my inbox and make a note of that, and maybe refer back to it if I felt, you know, the time was right where I felt they could add value to me. I'm almost in that position where I actually delete that quite instantly, and I'm making a totally different verbal note of, you know, actually I would never want to work with that person. It's really putting me off certain companies who are communicating that aggressive sales pitch at the moment. It's really sort of hitting a real nerve with me, and I'm actually sort of turning around and saying, look, I don't want to work with these people anymore. So I guess it's how do people still continue to communicate their sort of messages at the moment, keep people informed, stay in sort of the in people's mindsets, but without, you know, upsetting people and potentially damaging their brand.
I think, to be honest, Frankie, you've highlighted, I think, what's changed in marketing over the last 15 years. I started my career 35 years ago in the advertising world. It was the dominant part of the marketing mix, took all the money. We produced lots of fancy commercials, launched on television. And the essence of the industry was driven by what's effectively called outbound marketing. And what you're talking about there is an adherence to outbound marketing, is blasting the marketplace and trying to shake people up into buying from you. That clearly has changed since the advent of the internet in 1995. What's happened is the buyer has become much more sophisticated, and actually what you need to be doing now is you need to be building your reputation on an inbound strategy. So in other words, if you wake up in the morning with a problem, what's probably the first thing you do if you've got a challenge or an issue or a problem? What's one of the first things you probably do? You get into the office, you've got a challenge. What's one of the first things you do?
From our perspective, it really does depend whether it's obviously something that we can deal with as a group, or whether it's something it's sort of too sensitive for management to deal with, I guess. But I'm the sort of person who always sort of tries to lean on people's experiences, as you know, from Nigel, yeah, and so on. So I always ask opinions.
Okay, and if okay, so you wanted to buy a product or a service, what would be the first thing you do?
I'd research online.
And what does that mean? You research online. What do you mean?
So I would look for, probably the first thing that I would type if I'm looking for a product is I would put that product in and put reviews next to that, and have a look at what other people's opinions are. Okay,
so you and what platform would you use for that?
Google,
right? Okay, so here's the thing: you're not the only person that does that. In fact, 88% of all buying decisions start either with Google or Amazon. And that's true in the B2B space, that's true in the B2C, which are effectively the same thing anyway. So let's just think about that a little bit. What's happening is you are waking up with a challenge or an issue or a problem. You're then going on to Google and typing in a variant of that particular problem or concern, and it's giving you a whole set of results. And what you then do is you search through everything and you click on a few links, and you, in your case, might go to review sections, or you might just visit websites or whatever. And so far, at no point do any of the organizations that you are thinking of buying from know you're looking for them. But by the time you notify them and say, actually, I'd be quite interested in buying from you, right, you are now a very sophisticated buyer. Because you've woken up with a problem, you've qualified that problem by putting it online and realizing lots of other people have that problem. You've picked up tips. You've gone and read a few websites, read a few reviews. You've seen what people's views are. So actually, at the point that you make contact with the organization for the very first time, you are now a very, very sophisticated buyer. And where a lot of businesses go wrong is they then start shouting at you and saying, buy it for $9.99, subscribe for life, do all this sort of thing. And of course, you're going to go, whoa, no, hold on, stop all that. I'm not interested in that. I want to buy from you. Or they make it very difficult to buy from you. So the context of the buyer now is fundamentally different to receiving cold blast advertising led, from anyone saying, buy me, buy me, buy me. Actually, it's not where we're at the moment. The buyer is in control, not the seller. And where I came into the industry 35 years ago, the brand owners were in control. Now the buyer is in control. So let's just take that as a context piece. So here we are. We're sitting in our businesses and people are all currently online looking for you, for me, for everybody. They're currently physically online on Google searching for us. So first of all, the first thing you've got to do is, can you be found, right? So if you can't be found, and again, 74% of businesses are not listed by Google. They are simply not in the Google database. It may even be higher than that. And so think about that. So if you're hoping to get found by Google when people are searching for you and you're doing nothing about getting Google to like you, I'm afraid you're not going to be found. So assuming now you have acknowledged that you're going to be found and you're in Google, in the databases, bear in mind Google's just a database and they don't list every single website in the world. They simply can't. So what you need to do now is you need to be present in the marketplace. And the dominant strategy for being present in the marketplace is a strategy that is inspired by a book called The Challenger Sale, some 8-9 years ago, followed up by The Challenger Customer, and now recently revised by Gartner, who bought the organization behind those two books. And actually what's happening now is you have to blend with the marketplace with what's called insight. So what you do is you take your expertise, your IP, the exercise you've done with what's good about what you do, why you are a subject matter expert in your field. And what you do is you populate the marketplace that you want, where you know your buyers are going to be, with insight. So you're giving them tips, you're giving them tricks, you're giving them ways of working out what to do, you're educating them how to buy, you're ensuring that they're making the right decisions. So what your behavior is inside those marketplaces is you're like a friend, a best friend, you're a guide, you're a teacher, you're an educator. That's your strategy. Now what happens then is when I log into the space where you are available, looking with my problem, I see that you are consistently trying to help me out. And you're trying to give me advice. And you're trying, and over time, we go to people who are always helpful, who are always there, who are always present. And as a result, when we come to actually buy, we go to the people that we already are liking, who are like us. And we've been actively insightful. And that's why you individually are rejecting people who are shouting at you, but are more inclined to go and talk to people who are willingly saying, I did this, I found it did this, it didn't do what I expected. And you're accepting their view. You're accepting their reviews. And so what you have to do is behave as a business, as if you're an advisor, a subject matter expert. And the way to do that is to write detailed blogs, to add value on Twitter, to add value on Instagram, to make sure your website is enriched with good, wholesome information that people can either watch or read and go, actually, that's quite useful. I hadn't seen the world like that. This particular organization has a really interesting viewpoint on things. And so that people are inclined to come and do business with you rather than shouting prices, products, services, and that sort of thing. So it's very clear now that the buyer is in control, and what you need to do is lay out in front of everybody your subject matter expertise and say, how can we help you make the right decision?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think from part of what we've kind of applied, especially on search engines and so on, and from our experiences, video carries a huge amount of ranking signals at the moment. I think some people don't have an art for writing. and they get very much stuck with, you know, and I spoke to somebody yesterday about this, and they asked for advice from us and said, look, how can I make advantage of this situation? How do I get some content out there? How do I start doing better organically? Because I've got more time than I'm used to, so I can actually, you know, do this right now. And I said to him, well, if you're no good at writing, then stick yourself in front of a camera, pick a subject and just talk. And when you come to the end, just type up the video transcript, and there you go. That's your article. So, you know, you don't have to be the best writer in the world. Sometimes, you know, you're not the best at putting it down on paper, but you can verbally communicate it. So that's what we've kind of advised is put yourself in front of a camera, pick your topic, and don't just pick any topic. Pick a topic that has a purpose. So, you know, use a tool that shows you what people are looking for in your space on a monthly basis and how many people are looking for it. And don't just pick the one that has the highest amount of volume, because they're normally the most competitive. So they're the hardest to rank for. So have a look for ones that are uber relevant to what you do. Don't have as much competition around them. Produce your video, because when you put the video on that page as well, Google will love to see video content, because that's the way they believe that things are going. And a lot of what people do online will now be through video content. And that's a real easy way to start. And again, he said, well, how many do I do? Do I do one a month? And I said, you won't like the answer. And he said, it's going to be one a day, isn't it? And I said, to be honest, yes. And I said, they don't all have to be, you know, the real high end ones that you want to focus on. And they don't all have to be overly thought out. Sometimes just picking a lower volume keyword that you can talk about for 30 seconds is enough. And if you're doing lots of them and you're publishing all of that content, you'll be surprised how quickly all of those small articles can add up in terms of extra visitors to your website, and then can turn into X amount of more inquiries. So it's not always this huge task that I think people look at and think, oh, I don't even want to get started because I know it's going to be a huge chore. There are ways that you can do it which, you know, are not so daunting.
Yeah, and I think that's an absolute great start point, to be honest, Frankie. But I think where I would want to take it a little stage further is, rather than be driven by the keywords in the marketplace, because buyers don't actually know what they're looking for, if that makes sense. And the idea behind the insight strategy is, what you're doing is you're teaching your buyers to buy from you, rather than necessarily relying on what they think they know. And where I would actually, where I work with my clients, is I start with their value proposition. So what you should be doing is creating content that absolutely drives people to your value proposition. So if you're good at something, then the content should all be about demonstrating you're good at that particular thing. So that's what should be the driver of the content, rather than necessarily what people are searching for. Primarily because actually, when you do work on people's business plans, when you say to people, how many new buyers do you need? I often say, well, I could do with another 3 a month, or 10 a year, or 50, or something like that. Then these are not big numbers. So what you can do is you can be very, very efficient about only getting people attracted to you who are in a position to buy from you, rather than you're broadcasting out using a keyword strategy. So again, I accept that the digital industry that's emerged is still sort of a little bit beholden to broadcast thinking. In other words, what are people looking for? So let's go and be that word and then get loads of leads to our website. Whereas I come from a different discipline and say, actually, if you need 50 new buyers in a year, right, that's 5 a month. That's just over 1 a week. Okay, so how many people do I really need to get to the website? Maybe 10, maybe 15 people to the website who are absolutely prime candidates to buy from me. So therefore, I use my value proposition as the filter, and I build content around that. I think also your technique of creating videos is really good. Again, oddly enough, people find it just as difficult to talk to camera. And so one of the ways to do that is to do exactly what we're doing here, actually, is to get somebody to interview you on camera. It can be a friend. It can be somebody like you, Frankie, or you, Nigel. It's just to employ somebody to just come and spend an hour and say, so tell me about your business. Why is it good? oh, well, that's interesting. And what you do is you have a conversation, and actually the output of a conversation is often a wonderful thing to then refine and put into content, rather than you sit there thinking, well, I think people want to know about this, or I think people, because inevitably the way we are communicating is you have to, when you're writing a piece, you have to sort of almost write for both sides, the listener and the writer, rather than just generate loads and loads of content and people read it and go, yeah, yada yada yada. You've got to write it in such a way as people are kind of, as they read it, they go, and that leads to this question, and then you answer that question. When you're being interviewed by somebody, they go, oh, that's really interesting. So tell me a little bit more about that, because I didn't quite understand that, or I thought that was something that really resonated. And if you hold a two-way conversation and then transcribe that, as you say, and delete the interviewer, you've suddenly got a really, really interesting piece. And I recommend deleting the interviewer, because that's not. And actually, you can do that. You can do that on film. You have the interviewer off camera, so you could just be answering questions that way, and then what you can do is put in a still of the question that was asked and therefore remove the interviewer. You can do it that way. You can have the interviewer on. There's lots of ways of doing this, which are really neat. And it's much easier if somebody asks you the question.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to look at it. And then taking that to the next step, everybody, and I totally agree with becoming the sort of the person who's educating people, that tends to carry a lot more weight. And when we speak to people about that, often the sort of response we get is, well, why would I give away all the secrets about what I do? Right. Why should I tell people what to do? Because then they don't need me. So yeah, a little bit of thoughts around that as well.
Okay, so I just, it's such a great thing. You sort of hit the nail on the head. So immediately the phrase old school thinking comes into mind, because again, when I came into industry 30 years ago, you were absolutely promoted on the basis of your skills and what you knew. What's changed, of course, over my 30 years, but certainly in the last 10 or 15 years, is, of course, people are now recruited for attitude, not for knowledge. And the reason is because, in spite of what you think, you're the only person in all the trillions of people that are alive who know this one thing. I challenge them to Google what they think they know and find a blank page, because it just simply is not true. So the idea that what you know nobody else knows is so far removed from the world that I live in. It's sort of, and I can see Nigel giggling, it's such nonsense. So actually what you should be doing is telling everybody everything you know. Now the clever thing, and again it's in the challenge there, is if you talk non-stop about everything you know for half an hour, what happens to the person who's listening? They are completely overwhelmed. And they go, I can't, you've said 101 amazing things. So imagine you take all of these videos now that you're shooting for this SVTV, and you string them all together in a 3-hour mega blast, right? Or a 20-hour mega blast. And you force people to sit in a cinema and watch them back to back from all the people. And then as they come out, ask what they're going to do about the whole 20 hours worth of footage. They go, I'm not going to do anything. And the reality is that we are not selling skills anymore. None of us are selling skills anymore. What we're actually selling is time. And what we are actually selling is the ability for you to accelerate your business by using something I might be good at. So I spend all my waking hours thinking about how brands work and how businesses work and everything, whereas you sometimes do these interviews, at which point you're maybe not thinking about that. You're more worried about the technology, or you're doing something, or you're paying bills, or you're eating, or something like that. Why would you not use me and my filtered time spent getting all this expertise, and use this and just say, here's my question, can you give me a solution? Done, move on. So we're actually selling time now. We're not selling expertise. We're not selling skills. We're selling the ability to use those skills and that expertise very quickly, very efficiently, based on, I've been doing this for 35 years, and somebody who's just come into business and may have done no marketing at all. Well, why would you not do what you're good at, earn the money, and then spend it to accelerate your competency by using an expert, a subject matter expert? So I think those people who say, I feel like I'm giving it all away, right, probably haven't got anything to give away. They probably don't know anything. And the two things they seem to know, right, they're a bit scared of telling everyone, because then they really will have nothing. And so whenever I hear people say that, I go, okay, I've got your measure. You don't actually know what you're talking about. Because if you knew what you were talking about, you know that I need you as an expert, because you're an expert in what you do. And I haven't got time to become the same expert as you, so I'm going to buy your expertise. If you start telling me I'm not telling you what I know, because then you'll know it. I don't know. I know you don't know anything. And
that
what you
last
do,
5 minutes goes out as a video on its own.
it's just such a ridiculous statement in a modern day when you can Google absolutely anything. For somebody to say, well, if I tell you, you know the same as me, and then you won't need me anymore. It's beyond ignorance, in my opinion. Anyway.
To be fair, I mean, I totally agree with everything you've just said there. And it, simplified, where we turn around and say, well, people are just far too busy to do it themselves. Even if you did send them a document on how to do it, they still not going to do it themselves. But we've had people who go and try, and the amount of times people go and try and then come back a month later, that's how it always tends to happen.
Yeah, but again on that, Frankie, if people have had a go, I then teach them to complete the project. So I had exactly that this week. I did a CEO workshop a couple of weeks ago. The guy that ran it was so taken by the value proposition, he went away and did his own. And he sent it to me and said, I've had a go at your value proposition. I found it ready. Could you have a look at it? I then redid it and sent it back to him, and we had an hour together, and I explained why mine was slightly different to the one that he'd done. He sent me an email saying, you have given me a breakthrough. Thank you very much. Right. So my objective is to teach people to be as good as me when they come back, rather than it's not a sop to try and sell them anything, because I don't know, human endeavor for me, and I know you'll like this, Frank, human endeavor for me is about giving everybody a lift. If you lift everybody around you, the world lifts. If you try and prevent other people being you, the world only stays as big as you, and that's way too small. That's way too small. So I want other people. I want hundreds of people to be as good at me at what I do, because then, if I'm any good at what I do, I want more people to get the benefit of what I do. So therefore, I'm going to teach you. So if people go away and have a go and come back and say, I've had a go, I tried to do this myself, and then I got a bit stuck here, I go, okay, show me where you got stuck. Oh, well, the reason you got stuck is because you went here and you did that, and then you send them off again. Surely that's a cool thing to do. It's not about the money. It's not about that. It's about they invested part of their limited lifespan in trying to do what you do. I think that's amazing. I think it's hugely rewarding. And it's I suppose it's like parenting. When you bring up a child, you teach that child to do what you believe is right, and to behave in a certain way. Well, being in business is the same. I want you to be successful. I want Nigel to be successful. I want everybody who's watching this video to be more successful, because what that means is we've got a better economy, we've got a better world, we've got a better place to live in. Surely that's got to be the outcome. We're all driving on about the NHS and all this sort of thing. We want an economy that can sustain an amazing NHS. So we surely want all of us to be amazing business people. Wouldn't that be cool? Let's teach them. Let's educate them. Let's make them better business people.
Yeah, and I guess on the other side to that as well, there are people who come back who are almost broken by what they've tried to do and actually don't want to do it, even if you could teach them. They come back and go, oh, that's not for me. That was much harder than I expected.
And I think I agree with that, but we've all tried things that we thought, that sounds really good, and hasn't really worked.
I guess that sort of brings me on to the next point really as well. And one thing that we're hearing at the moment, we have a bit of this business as usual sort of standpoint. And I think that's the typical sort of British resolve that we have of the keep calm, carry on, the, get back in amongst everything as normal and don't be defeated and so on, which I think to some degree is right. But also I think we've seen that maybe businesses are not as agile and are not as sort of adaptable as they thought they might have been. And I've come across quite a few businesses who think, you know, the business that we was involved with, it's exactly the same position. We turned around and said, you know, we had a specialism. We specialised in the sort of baby boomer market. And then when this happened, that was kind of our downfall a little bit, because we didn't have a diverse enough client portfolio. So where we was pigeonholed into one area, when that particular demographic had to go into isolation very early on, we really felt that, and we wouldn't have done if we would have had some different types of clients on board. And somebody that I work really close with, they've gone through that same point at the moment. Is actually, I wish we were dealing with more e-commerce websites. They're a web development company. Yeah. So I wish we worked with e-commerce, because e-commerce is continuing and starting to thrive. So his sort of question to me was, you know, in this particular time, what do I do about that? Do I now start to try and position myself as an e-commerce expert, but by the time things go back to normal, I won't have had the time to go through that transitional period? And there's a great video on YouTube of Dan Cobley, who did a TED talk, which is about how physics also applies to marketing. And the bigger the particle, the harder it is to move. So if you're a big brand and you're a big business, really established, and you want to change direction, it's very hard to make that momentum shift. Slightly easier for smaller businesses, but still a challenge. For people like that at the moment who want to, do they innovate and adapt their own business, or are they better off setting up a new company and launching it that way?
Oh gosh. So I think the world that we live in has a very certain order that we rely on, and everything is disrupted at this moment in time. If I am a successful one-trick pony, what I would be doing is I would be absolutely finding every way of surviving during this crisis, so that I can go back to being the one-trick pony when the crisis goes. And if you look at what the government is doing, so let's take some examples of that. So if you're running an airline at the moment, you're not sleeping well, right? Because there are no planes at all going anywhere, yeah? And you've got a massive expense sitting there idle. We need airplanes when we come back. You know, when we can start traveling again and the virus has passed, and it may take 3 years. But once it's passed, people want to travel, because that's the nature of the world at large. What you have to now do is you have to build into your business resilience. So I would putting in place everything that I can do to be resilient and survive, to go into hibernation. I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't do anything. I would just go into hibernation. If I've got a kind of business which is a staple business in society, what the things that you're talking about, the kind of business you're talking about are the businesses that are potentially trend-led or fad businesses. So in other words, they're businesses that aren't really at the rock solid part of the way society works. They are kind of nice to have businesses rather than need to have businesses. And again, I will be recommending to spend all of your energy getting resilient rather than worrying about innovation. Because if we all wake up after all this virus is gone and we walk out into the outside world and everybody's changed, actually we'll all go mad, because there'll be nothing the same. We'll need things to be the same. So if you found what you are good at, you must stick at what you're good at and become resilient and just go into hibernation. There are lots and lots of ways. The government, if you look at the government strategy, it's all about enabling everybody to go into hibernation. So if you've got employees, you can get 80% of their income. If you're a small business, you can get grants. If you've got VAT holidays, you've got everything. The government is doing absolutely, they're throwing absolutely gazillions of pounds of this, billions actually of pounds of this, to help the country go into hibernation. So I think the first thing you should do as a business leader is go, what is our resilience model? What can we do? Do we send people? Do we furlough people? Do we send them home? Do we stop stop expenditure that we don't need, keep the money going. It's really important, that. Now, in doing that, of course, you have a chance in business, which is really, really fortunate, is you can take a breath. You can stop, because normally most business owners are on the tools, making the business work, making sure the staff are okay, keeping the systems and process, cranking the handle on their business. Once the business is made resilient and in hibernation, what you can do as a business leader is sit there and go, okay, can I improve the way I'm doing things right now that are really good? What can I do that is better than the way I did before? And you can start to explore how you can become more efficient, more effective, add value to the things you're already good at. Let's be quite clear about this. Add value to the things. So you can spend a significant proportion of time thinking about it and go online, talk to people like any of the three of us and say, what's your view on this? Take in views, whatever. And effectively repackage what you're already good at, which is now dormant and asleep, and say, okay, when we come back out, I'm going to have a better way of making more net profit from what I'm doing. So that's the next level. So first of all, get resilient, go into hibernation, improve what you're doing. Then, of course, if you've done both of those things, then I think you can start to sit down and go, okay, how do I do some NPD? How do I create some new products and services from what I've got? How do I innovate? But the focus of that innovation should be at the end of the crisis, not during the crisis. And I think people who spend a lot of money innovating to try and make good of what's going on now and make money from it will fail horribly. Because first of all, they'll invest a lot of time and energy into something that people will only want during the crisis. And when the crisis ends, they won't want it anymore, because they want to go back to the safety and the security of what they had before. Now, my view on that is I think you need to be really, really careful if you shift the whole emphasis of your thinking into innovation to try and deal with something that's going on now. Now, we all have projects, I have myself, projects that have been sitting on the back burner that would revolutionize my life. Residual income. I mean, it's very common for people who are in small organizations and who are speakers and content providers to say, what we need to do is build a residual income model so that we don't even have to get out of bed. Make money while you're asleep. I've got half a dozen of those projects burning a hole in my filing cabinet, and actually now's a great time to bring them out, explore them, investigate, have the conversations. But I'm designing them for when the crisis ends, not for the crisis. And I think we need to be really, really careful, primarily because the buyer's mindset right now is fundamentally different to the way it would be if we have some degree of normalization returning. And the way people are behaving now is the wrong kind of psychographic profile. It's the wrong kind of mindset to create a product for this. You'll suddenly find you create a product for the market right now, and when it ends, it's going to go. Somebody was. We had a great conversation yesterday about Zoom. So Zoom is now worth more than any other airline. Yeah, as a stock. Yeah, so Zoom, the thing we're on right now, that business is worth more. Now's the time to short it, to actually make sure that, because I can assure you that the moment that we return to normal, the share price in Zoom will disappear overnight, because everyone will stop using it. Now, there'll be people who've got used to using it and think it's quite good and it's saved them traveling, and they'll carry on. But the level at which it'll be used will be nothing like it is now, or any of the online platforms. So designing your business around Zoom, for example, is madness, or whatever, because people are going to go, no, do you know what? I would prefer to have a cup of coffee with the two of you, yeah, in a cafe and have this chat and have a microphone and have a camera and stuff like that, rather than do it this way, because we will normalize. So I think there are three levels. The first recommendation was put in resilience, find cash wherever you can and get it into your bank account. Right, because this could last a long time. The second thing then is to look at what you were doing before. Can you make it better? Can you make it more efficient? so that when you come out of this, you can really get going quickly. I think actually, in addition to that, and you'd expect me to say, you must keep marketing. You must keep the relationships going with the marketplace right now, because when people come back, they're going to come and do business with the people that they were looked after them during the crisis. And then the final thing is, I'd be looking at innovation, but I'd be innovating for when the crisis ends. Clearly, if you can MVP it, minimum viable product, you can create a minimum viable product and try it out now, that's probably a really cool thing to do. But design it for the future. Do not design it for here and now. You'd be mad to do that, in my opinion.
Very interesting. Anything from you, Nigel?
What do you think of that?
No, I agree. I think there are some things that have come up that I think even in a normal environment, and what you've just said there is absolutely true. There are certain things that were just put on the back burner that should have been done in a normal environment that just wasn't, because you didn't find the time. You were always firefighting business, so you just didn't have the sort of time frame to be able to put these projects into motion. And I do think that those are the things that people should, if they have the time now, be putting into place. But like you say, I didn't look at it from the context of apply it to when things return to normal. It would have been easy to just get hands on now and start to do it. And I think that's what's made people a little bit shocked in this current environment as well. Especially, I mean, this is going out onto YouTube. I know a lot of YouTube content creators that felt that in this time, views would go through the roof and skyrocket because everyone was indoors and needed entertainment. Actually, the opposite's happened. It's gone through the floor. So everything you've just said there is absolutely right. That, you know, if you plan to do something now, you may get a very skewed idea of what was important and what you should be doing, because you'll do something that in the normal environment would have really taken off and really sort of spiraled and gone on to strength. But in this current climate, actually it doesn't gain any momentum. And then you think, oh, actually that wasn't worth doing. In reality, if it was the normal environment, it was the right thing to do. So I think people do need to be careful of the results they generate in this time, because it's not a normal climate.
Yeah, and I think you have to be really, really careful. I mean, if I'm a toilet roll manufacturer, right, I'm probably working 24 hours around the clock trying to produce toilet roll. But what the risk to that is that there'll be so many toilet rolls out in people's cupboards, they won't buy toilet rolls for 3 months after the crisis ends, because they go, oh God, now it's back to normal. I better use up the toilet rolls I've got in the shed down the bottom of the garden. Yeah, and what you can find, pasta and rice. I mean, goodness me, I mean, we've got enough pasta and rice to feed the whole population 3 times over, and yet you can't buy a bag because people's kitchen cupboards are full of it. Well, they're going to be eating pasta for the next 6 months. And if you sell pasta, you're not going to sell any pasta. I remember I launched a thing called Lips and Ice Iced Tea, and at the time I was working with Lips and Ice, went through Bond, which is one of the Unilever companies, because they were the drinks organisation, and they did a promotion many years ago where you got a free plastic dinosaur on top of 60 bags of tea bags, and it was literally just strapped onto the top of the thing, and they did them in bin ends in the supermarkets. And I went to Brook Bond on the Lips and Ice job, and everybody was celebrating record sales. They'd sold 4 times more tea than ever before. This promotion was an absolute winner, yeah, with these plastic dinosaurs on the top of this. And then 2 months later, everybody was with long faces. They were being delisted. Sales had gone through the floor. And when the research came back, they discovered that because the dinosaurs were visible, people were going in and buying the full set of 6 dinosaurs, because they didn't dare go home with just the one Tyrannosaurus Rex. They needed the Brontosaurus and the Stegosaurus and all of those sorts of things. So people were buying 6 packets of tea at the same time with the 6 different dinosaurs that you could see, and taking them home, because they had enough tea for a year. So what happened is they didn't buy tea after that. And of course, then the supermarket said, well, you know, we can't give up. We've got the rate of sale on your tea bags has gone through the floor, so we're going to remove them and delist them off the shelves and put something else up there that sells. And of course, so I think the same is going to happen now. I think people are rushing to create things, to buy things. You know, we're going to have 50,000 too many ventilators when we get back to normal. You know, there'll be stockpiling on everywhere. So they're absolutely necessary now, but of course, come the end of the crisis. And so I think we have to be really careful as businesses that we don't design something, we don't engineer something that, okay, you can make a few quid on it in the next 3 months or so, but at the end of that, you're going to have wasted a lot of time and energy on something that was popular for a very short period of time and actually won't fund your business in the long run, won't reset your business. And you've missed the trick of taking those things out of the drawer that you've got, Frankie, that you think, I should have done that under normal circumstances, and done that and got that right and really refined it and got ready for when the crisis ends. Now, if your business ends during this period because the grants don't come through and you run out of cash and you have to close down and whatever, what you're really doing is you're inventing a new business, because then what you do is relaunch, get another company from Company's House and relaunch with this new amazing version 2.0 of your business. And then that could be a really exciting period to start all over again with all the knowledge and the wisdom of having run a business before. So I'm very optimistic about working on the business you've got now and making it better and setting it for the end of the crisis.
I think that's quite interesting, and we've been through that, or I've been through that with some people in the past, and people are always so scared of starting up that 2.0 because the business they started is their baby. It's the thing that they nurtured it, and
yes.
Everyone's always so protective over that and so precious over it. And sometimes actually the best thing to do is clear out the dead wood and start again. But people really struggle.
Yeah, and you know what? You don't become a bad player overnight. You know, you just go through a period where you're not scoring the goals, or you're not defending as well as you used to, or you're not as good a goalkeeper as you were before. And actually, we should spend more time telling each other how good we are, because you don't, just because your business ends doesn't make you rubbish. Actually, what you're going to do is take that thinking, you know, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. You know, it kind of, there's a whole mindset piece there. It's just saying, you know, you were bloody good to get to where you got to at that point. Right, get rid of all the flotsam and jetsam and reset yourself as the new, cleaner, leaner, better, more effective, more efficient subject matter expert in your field, and build another business around it. I think it could be really, really exciting times for the people who've got the right mindset.
Yeah, agreed. Anything from you, Nigel?
It's always exciting times, Barnaby, always exciting times. It's been really helpful, actually, Frankie, you asking the question, because I've spoken to Barnaby so many times. You've been asking questions I wouldn't have asked, because I've asked them before, and actually got some slightly different answers today. So that's been really helpful. Barnaby, how about yourself? What's going on with yourself in business at the moment?
So I'm very fortunate that I have a managed portfolio. So I've centralized my IP and I then pushed it out. So from a professional speaking point of view, as you would appreciate, that's completely stopped. There are no events, no conferences. That said, I did my first CEO workshop last week on Zoom. And I spent 2 days working out how to use Zoom correctly. But actually, so I have the paid for version. I had 11 attendees. I did breakout rooms. I did hand raising Q&As. I played videos, and I ran through a 3.5 hour PowerPoint presentation. Had loads of props. You know, did the breaks, all that sort of thing. So it was exhausting. I had 4 screens up. And something different on every screen. You have to work the machine and do this. So it was exhausting, but hugely rewarding. So that's kind of now an added piece to my portfolio, is that I can now run virtual CEO workshops. The rating I got back was 8.4 out of 10 for content, 7.7 for overall, which is a really good result for something like that, because the CEOs are skeptics at the best of times. So I'm doing that. I have shot over the last 5 years some 300 odd videos, which I've done nothing with, frankly. They're all sitting in Vimeo, beautifully shot, beautifully edited, doing nothing with them. So I'm currently working with the guy that helped me create those to create a product that we can then push out. I have, as a result, engaged with an e-learning platform in China and one in Finland, and as well as a couple of opportunities here in the UK to repurpose that content and see where that goes. And that's part of a residual model, and in fact is the cornerstone of a business, the second business that I started a few years ago. My clients, so really interesting, my client base, I have a client base where I provide the Brand Bucket program at a very high ticket item over a period of a year. I have a beauty clinic in Exeter that is now closed. The client has said, wonderful opportunity for us to get all the marketing stuff sorted. What we'd like to do is sort out our new brand, which we've got, get everything prepared so that when we reopen with a new brand. So they're really, really active at the moment, trying to get all that done. My biggest client that lends money to small businesses had a meeting this week about whether they stop lending altogether, because the risk profile of businesses that they're lending to has gone through the floor, of course, because if they lend to a business, the chances are that business may not survive, because the government has yet to provide any clarity on how it supports small businesses. If you employ people, you're fine. If you pay VAT, you're fine. If you've been going for some time, you're fine. If you've got offices, you've got fine. But actually, for some 4 odd million businesses, actually it's about 2 million businesses that are trading, there is nothing for them. So of course, and they're the kind of business they lend to, so they're worried about that. But if they can, the guy that runs that business is on the advisory board to the government, so he's advising the government. So you need to use the alternative lender market, so all the people online, to handle all these small businesses, because at the moment the government is insistent on putting it through the main banks. Well, I don't know if any of you have had any dealings with the main banks, but they are at best slow and are not geared for small businesses. So what they are saying is take the 250 odd thousand businesses that are 10 plus people, put them through the mainstream banks, and put all the other businesses through the alternative lending market. So they're currently lobbying the government for that. If they're successful with that, then that's then made. We are currently preparing insight materials to flood the market with the moment everything picks up again. My recruitment client has lost 90% of his business. My tutoring client has lost 100% of his business, provides tutoring and scribing services to state schools. Of course, they're all closed, so they've got nothing. So that part of the portfolio is looking, and I'm working with my final client is in the laser technology space, and they have been going for 3 years on investors' money. So they can't claim anything at all. And although they employ 30 people, they can't claim anything for anyone because they don't have any turnover, because they've not made any sales yet. They built an amazing product which was due to go on market in August this year. That's been delayed to August next year. And so they've got no turnover. So they had a meeting with the investors yesterday. I don't know what the outcome of that has been. But again, there has to be a decision on whether that's money sunk and dead or whether they're going to carry on funding it. So that part of the client portfolio is going well. I have my second book, Nigel. You know, I've been writing this for 4 years. I now have somebody who rings me and says, "Where's the next chapter? Where's the next chapter?" So I'm currently active on that. I'm updating my Instagram. I'm updating my LinkedIn. I'm reworking my website. I'm helping, really active with the Guild of Entrepreneurs, which I'm a founding freeman of. So we are currently working on improving our ability to provide services to young entrepreneurs. And I'm working on both the outreach and the fundraising committee on that. So there's lots of things to and fro on that because it's all pro bono and we've got time. And the final thing is rather oddly, I have 16 active mentees who I mentor one-to-one, and they are asking for more mentoring time rather than less mentoring time, because it's a great opportunity to do it. I do a lot of it over Zoom anyway, have done for the last 4 or 5 years. So they are going in, whether it's because they're lonely or they're just, like to be entertained or whatever. So my mentoring, the mentoring side of my business has really gone. It's improved. The return on that has improved. So apart from that, garden's looking the best it's ever looked. I have my 3 daughters who have all been kicked out of university and are at home, so I spend as much time as I can in the office. And we got a new puppy at the weekend, so that's keeping us entertained. So actually, do you know what? Mental health good. I'm running 5k every day and 10k at weekends each day on a Saturday and a Sunday, so I do 20k a weekend. So I'm trying to get fitter. I'm eating well. So I'm keeping my mental health well, keeping my physical fitness, improving that because I'm a little bit of a blob, and business-wise, just doing what I've said. I've consolidated everything. I've drawn in as much cash as I can so I can survive the next year without selling anything, and then everything I sell is a bonus, and then reinventing exactly the model that I talked about earlier on this call. So generally, assuming that I stay fit and well, really good place at the moment, to be honest.
Brilliant. That's good stuff. Frankie?
Yeah.
Barnaby, thank you for that today. That's been really, really good. I think we've got lots of bits there, Frankie, we can cut into small pieces and put out as well. Some great information, some really good thoughts as always, especially on that not pivoting during the crisis, actually sticking to what you're good at. I thought that was really, really valuable.